What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel that we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories. Now, guys, today we are going to jump back over to DC Comics, and we're going to continue our coverage over the Green Lanterns and pick up with Green Lanterns Volume 2, the second storyline in the Volume 2 collection, which is called The Phantom Ring. Now, this right here is finally giving us the idea of how powerful the Phantom Ring can truly be. So, if you guys like today's video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe for more comic book videos like this in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, let's dive into the Phantom Ring storyline in Green Lanterns Volume 2. The story starts off years ago in the past, where we pick up with a random test pilot named Frank Lemensky, where we see him testing out the new plane, except we pick up when the plane is going out of control. And instead of just landing the plane down somewhere, you have Frank continue to try to get the plane under control again. And of course, he is making it worse for himself. And so right when the plane is about to crash, you have Hal Jordan appear and save him at the very last second. This leads into Frank Lemensky starting to love the idea of becoming a Green Lantern himself. And this is where we learn a little bit more about Frank Lemensky. That growing up, he was kind of on the bad side of the luck train. He was a middle child, and so his parents kind of forgot about him. And every time he was trying to achieve something, he always ended up being second place in those things. And so when it came to him trying to become an A-list test pilot, that plane he was testing out earlier was his big shot. But of course, we saw him fail that test. And so he ended up being on a list where he never got another chance to fly a plane. But after that test, he did not care about being a pilot. His goal was to become a Green Lantern. When John Stewart appeared, it led to Frank realizing that there are more than one Green Lantern out there in the universe. And so of course, it led to him believing the idea of himself becoming a Green Lantern. To him, all he has to do is train his body and wait for a ring to choose him to become a Green Lantern as well. And so this leads to him always training and taking jobs that were higher risk level jobs, hoping that would help him get a ring. Except everything he did was not helping him out, because that is when you had Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner appeared. And so it led to him to start believing that whatever he is doing is not helping him out in becoming a Green Lantern at all. And this leads to him thinking about being this amateur vigilante and trying to prove that he can show that he is a tough person, that he deserves to be a Green Lantern, where we pick up with him going out and trying to protect a lady from getting mugged by some random thugs. And so when Frank tried to jump in and stop the thugs, well, it ended up with him getting his butt kicked to the point most of the bones in his body are broken from being beaten up by the thugs. And so this led to him going home to his beat up apartment, just crying his heart out, wanting a ring so bad that he screamed to the sky, just praying for a ring to come down to him. And that is when a ring does appear, and it does seem like he is going to become a Green Lantern finally. Except at the very last second, we see the ring basically say it was an error, which it then flies off into the sky to look for the next Green Lantern of Earth. Of course, this led to Frank seeing two new Green Lanterns appearing, Simon Bass and Jessica Cruz. Now the Green Lantern ring goes to Cuba, and of course, that is where Simon Bass was before becoming a Green Lantern. And this led into Frank going back home to his apartment and trying to figure out what his next move should be, since now there are 6 Green Lanterns of Earth, and none of them is him. And so he is literally on the verge of quitting on trying to become a Green Lantern. Except when he gets home, that is when he is greeted by someone in the shadows. speaking about him getting a ring. This voice tells him about the phantom ring, the one we have been seeing in our last couple videos, how you do not have to be chosen by the ring. You can put it on and become any kind of lantern you want. But right when the chapter closes, we see this man in a cloak saying his name is Balthum and how he was the first lantern. But this tells us that it was Frank who we saw at the end of our last video. That is when we jump to the present day and we see Frank arriving at this random house, asking the homeowner if he can use her home for something big. And this leads us over to Simon Bass, Jessica Cruz, and the Green Lantern Rami, where we see Simon Bass is trying on the phantom ring. And this is him changing into all the different kinds of lanterns, from green, red, blue, and so on and so on. But you have Rami take away the lantern ring from him and basically tell him how this ring is not a game. And this leads into Jessica and Simon trying to think of a game plan on what to do with the phantom ring. Simon wants to hand the ring over to the Green Lantern Corps, except for Jessica. She does not want to go to space because she's afraid of flying in space. And before they are able to continue their argument, you have Jessica see a house on fire and they leave to go handle that fire. But you have them leave Rami with Simon's family. And this is where we get a few pages of the Green Lanterns trying to handle the fire of this house, where of course they are saving this mother and daughter from this house. Except this is the lady we saw earlier when Frank asked her about using her home for something big. Well, we come to find out it was to set her house on fire, and there's a very good reason why Frank set this lady's house on fire for. That is when we jump over to Frank actually arriving at the home of Simon Bass, where we see that while Rami and Simon's brother are outside arguing, we see Frank sneak in and go straight for the phantom ring. Now, of course, we see Rami catch Frank putting on the ring, and Rami is always on guard when it comes to the ring. And so, of course, he'll be the one to catch Frank trying to steal the ring. And right when you have Rami trying to stop Frank from getting away with the phantom ring, that's when you have Balthum, this mysterious character, appear and knock out Rami. And with Rami being knocked out, you have Frank put on the phantom ring and become the Phantom Lantern. And this is huge because he has all the powers of all the different lanterns. And that's when we see him turn into a Green Lantern like he always wanted to be, which of course leads into him being excited about the idea of being one. But that is when you have Simon's brother appear to stop Frank from leaving with the ring. And right when Simon's brother is trying to stop Frank with an axe, you have Frank turn from a Green Lantern into a Yellow Lantern. And that is when you have Balthum explain how the phantom ring is actually connected to the person's emotions who is wearing the ring. And so when Simon's brother came at Frank with an axe, Frank was so scared he turned into a Yellow Lantern. And so after Balthum had explained that to Frank, you have Frank use the powers of the Yellow Lanterns to show Simon's brother his worst fear, which of course his son looking badly beaten up on. This leads us back over to Simon and Jessica talking to the homeowner from earlier, explaining how someone came to her house and asked her to use her home. That is when you have Simon look up in the sky and see Frank flying off with Rami the Guardian, wondering when did Earth get another Green Lantern? And this leads us into seeing Frank just going around having a good time being a Green Lantern. And this is something he always wanted to be. And we are seeing him enjoying the fact of being a Green Lantern, even though what he did to get a ring is completely wrong. But he does not care because he is high on power at the moment. And so this high that he's on right now could be his downfall at the end of the story. And this leads to him finally taking on a big task to see if he is capable of being a Green Lantern, where we see on a small farm a boy is chasing after his dog who is running into a tornado, which of course leads into the boy and his dog being caught by the tornado. where of course you have Frank appear and try to be a show off because the fact he has a ring now and it gives him powers to do almost anything he wants to do. And so this leads into us seeing Simon and Jessica talking to Simon's brother about what had happened with Rami and the Phantom Ring, where you have Simon's brother tell them that some guy walked in and grabbed the ring and Rami basically, which leads into Jessica and Simon wondering how they're going to find Frank, Rami, and Balthum, which Jessica is able to find a way to track down Frank and the Phantom Ring. Which takes us back over to Frank, and we see him being in the middle of an interview after saving the boy and his dog, which of course you have Frank all happy about being a hero now. Except this leads into Jessica and Simon arriving to stop him because they know that he has the Phantom Ring. Except when they appear here and try to stop him, that this makes them look bad on television. Because Frank just saved a kid and the kid's dog, and here is Simon and Jessica stating that he is a bad guy and he kidnapped their boss Rami. And you have Frank throw out the fact that Simon was in jail, and Jessica is somebody who fights anxiety daily. And so for them to say that he does not deserve the ring and he is a bad guy, but they have their own past to deal with, makes them look bad right now on live television. Except this leads into Jessica answering his response, stating that Hal Jordan was the one who told them that they deserved their rings. If he was here right now, he would actually disagree with Frank and would try to stop him as well. And with Frank hearing about how Hal Jordan would not like what he has done so far in this storyline, Frank actually changes into the Phantom Ring form, which means he's at the start of the process of losing control of the ring. Of course, with him changing forms, everyone around him starts to freak out, which then leads to him freaking out even more, and him just constantly changing forms left and right, to the point he just blows up and turns into an orange lantern, which of course means greed, because to him, this ring belongs to him, and he deserves this ring. And so with him being an orange lantern now, you have Simon Bass and Jessica try to stop him because he just flipped out and now he must be stopped before he hurts an innocent person. And so of course you have Simon and Jessica try to stop him at the same time trying to protect innocent people around them. Except of course it leads to Frank getting away and wondering where he's going to next. This is where we pick up with Frank at his apartment, and he is freaking out. His emotions are all over the place. He went from fear to rage to even greed as well. Remember that the Phantom Ring is connected to the person's emotions who is wearing the ring. If that person's emotions are all over the place, well, that person will change to different kinds of lanterns. And so you have Balthum actually talk and help Frank get back under control before he blows up. This is where we see Balthum is trying to do some kind of ritual on Rami. And this is where we learn that Balthum wants revenge against Rami and the other Guardians. But you have Balthum tell Frank to go back out there and stop Simon and Jessica from finding them before he is able to finish the ritual on Rami. And this leads into Jessica and Simon trying to figure out how they're going to find Frank again. But this leads into an argument between the two of them about the idea of a lantern ring choosing someone. Because to Jessica, she thinks the rings are not perfect, that the rings made a mistake choosing her and Simon. But to Simon, he thinks the rings do not make a mistake, that if a ring chooses you, then there must be a good reason why the ring chose you to become a lantern. And this is a pretty good argument here, because it does lead into the big question: can a lantern ring actually make a mistake when choosing someone to become a lantern? Except this does lead into both the rings going off saying, hey, look, we found Frank, he is at so-and-so location, go there now to finally stop this man. And this leads us over to Memorial Park, where in the middle of the park there is a place where the past Green Lanterns had built to honor lost heroes. Except you see Frank there trying to impress random ladies there because to him, he thinks that with him being a lantern, ladies are just going to fall for him in a second. Except that's when you have Simon and Jessica appear and they try to take the Phantom Ring away from him, where of course the fear in him starts to come out and he turns into a yellow lantern once again, which makes him show off the dark side of Simon and Jessica as constructs. This is where we jump into the past, where we learn a little bit more about the origin of Balthoom, where we pick up with him being the first lantern, but he is on some kind of rampage, where you have the Guardians freaking out on what to do to stop Balthoom. That is when you have Rami walk up and present the first 7 Green Lantern rings ever to be made. That these rings will go out and find someone and they will come back and fight against Balthoom before he destroys the universe. Except we do not learn much about this incident just yet. We only get a small glimpse of this and we jump back to the present day, where we see Simon and Jessica fighting the worst version of themselves as fear constructs coming from Frank's Phantom Ring, where of course you have them fighting and it goes back and forth, but these constructs are stating the worst things about them. For example, the constructs are playing on the idea of Jessica's anxiety, making her feel like she cannot be a Green Lantern. They also play on the fear of Simon Bass feeling like he is too weak, and that is why he carries a gun, because he fears the ring is going to fail him one day and a gun is going to be the only thing to save his life. This is where we jump over to Balthoom and Rami, where we learn a tad bit more of the origin of Balthoom and his connection with Rami, where we learn that Balthoom was the first lantern, except he had the first ever power battery put inside of him. With that power battery, it gave him complete connection to the emotion spectrum, which then he went crazy and started to tear up the universe. And so the Guardians had to stop him and then lock him away forever. This led into, of course, him coming back and wanting revenge because Rami was his best friend. And Balthoom feels like Rami was the one who betrayed him, the one who made him go crazy with power, and apparently the only thing Balthoom wanted was to go home. This is where we jump over to Simon and Jessica still fighting against the worst version of themselves as fear constructs, where earlier they were getting in the head of Simon and Jessica, but we now see them able to snap out of it and actually get rid of the constructs and finally get back to focusing on Frank once again, where we pick up with Frank going crazy again and constantly changing forms left and right, from being the Phantom Lantern into being a Red Lantern, or even a Yellow Lantern, or even a Blue Lantern. That basically he is once again letting his emotions go out of control, and the ring is having a hard time deciding on what lantern he wants to be, to the point where you have Simon and Jessica freaking out and wondering what they can do to stop him. And so, of course, you have Simon and Jessica move in, but that is when you have Frank freak out and let out a massive amount of energy. And this led us to see what had happened after the large amount of energy was let out of Frank's body, where we see him as an indigo lantern now, which of course means the emotion of compassion. And so we are literally seeing him feeling compassion about what he has done so far to both Simon and Jessica. Now, of course, you have both lanterns play on this with trying to make him feel bad enough where he wants to take off the Phantom Ring and finally hand it over to them. Where of course he does take off the Phantom Ring, which does give the lanterns a chance to finally stop him. This of course leads into Simon knocking the ring out of Frank's hand and flying over to Jessica, where we have Jessica pick up the ring to prevent Frank from getting it. Of course, Jessica tries to put the Phantom Ring on to see what kind of lantern she would really be. Would she be a red, a yellow, an indigo, blue, or whatever other color that is out there in the universe. Except this is where we see her being able to conquer the Phantom Ring, which helped her realize that the Green Lantern ring made the right choice. This also led to her being able to make multiple different constructs in seconds and capture Frank finally, and it does look like the day is saved until something else happens. This is where we see John Stewart and another Green Lantern appear on Earth, since Simon Bass put a distress call out earlier to the Green Lanterns. They flew out to see what was the big problem. This of course led into Simon and Jessica telling them about the Phantom Ring and Frank. Of course, you have John Stewart looking confused because he never heard of the Phantom Ring until this moment right here. That's when you have Rami appear and explain how dangerous the Phantom Ring can truly be. Now this is a huge shock for John Stewart, because if you have been watching our Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern videos, we learned that all of the Guardians are dead, and they just recently found 2 Guardians thanks to Hal Jordan. And so seeing another one on Earth is big news. But you have Rami basically tell John Stewart that he is going to stay on Earth to actually train the 2 new Green Lanterns, since the other Green Lanterns will not help out with that training process. And this is where we jump a few moments before Rami appeared to answer the question of what had happened with the fight between Rami and Valthum. Well, the fight does go back and forth for a few pages, but at the very end of the fight, we see that Valthum was able to win the fight and able to complete the ritual, where it is able to remove the soul from a person's body, which of course that what had happened to Rami. And we see that Valthum has Rami's soul trapped inside some crystal ball. And the story closes with us seeing Valthum pretending to be Rami, just playing around inside his body. And this is where we are going to end today's video. So guys, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories like this in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here and I will see you on the next comic book video. Later guys.